Tulsi Gabbard just landed a huge endorsement that actually went relatively under the radar, but we're going to talk about it here today. Thanks for watching. So a lot of you already know that Tulsi Gabbard did not get into the recent debate. Not that she was going to go anyway, because she's already made it very clear that she will not be participating in any debates until at least after the New Hampshire primary, because that's where she will be focusing all her efforts. And she said in New Hampshire, South Carolina, and also in Iowa. So she decided instead, not that she had a chance to, because they didn't do any polling for months, literally, which is the only reason Yang wasn't part of it. But hey, she decided to use her time a little bit more wisely. And she decided to hold a peace discussion regarding the war with Iran. At this discussion was one Dennis Kucinich, and there he gave an emphatic endorsement of one Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. And this endorsement is not small potatoes, and I will explain to you why. But first, let's check out his endorsement.
I went and picked up these pictures, and it was like a litany over and over and over of people who love the fact that their son was serving, who believe in the country. I come from a family of people who served in the military. And yet, this faith, this belief in America is just getting trashed by people who think it's some kind of a game of nations that you can just, do whatever you want, zap anybody you want, bomb any country you want, kill anyone you want, and then, do in the name of heaven, you can justify it in the end. We need a fundamental change. And one of the reasons why I think Tulsi Gabbard's candidacy is so important is because she's raising those kind of questions. And finally, for my part at this moment, let me give you an example of how pernicious this drive towards war and militarization is. On December 11th, 2019, just a little more than a month ago, Congress had a vote on the National Defense Authorization Act. And that bill put close to $800 billion into this military machine. $800 billion. And that bill also created another branch of the military called the Space Force. Now, wouldn't you know it, there were 189 Republicans who voted for that bill, but there were 189 Democrats. Tulsi was only one of 41 Democrats who voted against that bill. And in the Senate, there were only 5 Democrats who voted against the bill. So this whole idea about you change parties, put another party in power, that we're going to automatically have a different approach, that's not necessarily so. And it's the structure. The present president promised an end to these wars, and the president who preceded him promised that as well. We're not going to be like an old horse led by a carrot, and we think the carrot called peace, somehow we're someday going to get it. We have to stop that thinking. We have to have the willingness to back an individual who's been on that path already of service, who has seen the effect of war, and knows that we must end it now. And this is the election to do it. So thank you.
Yeah, buddy. That's Dennis Kucinich, for those of you who don't know. Now, Dennis Kucinich was a former congressperson. He's also served as mayor and some other offices as well, but that was where he became to be most known, was his congressional state. Good God, I can't even talk today, y'all. I was way too tired. Go to bed like 2 o'clock in the morning talking to y'all last night. But anyway, his tenure in Congress was known as an anti-war crusade, basically because the man was emphatically against Iraq, amongst some other things that he did, little things here and there that don't really get talked about out in the open, but get brought up during things like presidential elections. Iran was a topic. Israel-Palestine was a topic. And during his stint in Congress, the man was calling out the president on anything and everything. He was the person who wrote a whole whole host of reasons, detailed and broke it down exactly why we should not invade Iraq. So he was one of the very few, along with people like Barbara Lee or Bernie Sanders, in a couple of others. It was a couple of others that voted against the second AUMF and just did whatever he could to get us out of Iraq after. He actually voted for pulling the troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan in 2011 as well. Now, here's why this is important for you all to kind of understand the gravity of an endorsement like this, because now obviously when you have a certain level of popularity, when people endorse you in 2020, it's generally because they know it could benefit them in some way, form, or fashion. Now, if you're Dennis Kucinich, who's already served, who ran for governor but was beaten by a centrist, this could hurt you even more. People already remember your anti-war crusade, and they know how you're going to govern and what you're going to do. Now, I want to show you all some answers on war and peace, or not show you all, read them to you. Some answers on war and peace from Dennis Kucinich while he was running for president. In case a lot of you all forgot, he ran against Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Edwards, Mike Gravel, shout out to Big Mike, and I think it was a couple of others, but Joe Biden. Now, once again, what's funny about that is, like, could you imagine right now having Dennis Kucinich and Mike Gravel running the same race? Oh man, we would be celebrating them, right? We were like, there's no way we can mess this up. Let's go ahead and push as hard as we can and let them out. And yeah, you would think that, except for right now, we do have a version of Dennis Kucinich and Mike Gravel running for office, and we're not getting it right. Like I said, I hope that this weekend, with Warren's actions, hopefully we get on the right track and recognize what we have. But I do want to read a little bit from his responses on these key issues. I was right the first time. No evidence of nukes in Iran. The question was, do you agree with the president's assessment that Iran still poses a threat? Our answer. Unfortunately, the president, just as he was able to convince some of my colleagues here to vote for the war against Iraq, despite the fact there wasn't any real evidence. So he has been able to get some of my colleagues here, Senator Clinton, Obama, and Edwards, to say, hold on, sorry. There you go. I had to make my screen bigger. To say all options are on the table for Iran. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's a big deal. That's what I'm saying. You gotta understand to see the parallels. All right, let's talk about it. My candidacy offers the American people someone for president who was right the first time. All right. Now, this is a big one, right? Because of Tulsi, this is something that everybody, if you're a progressive, you want her to be stronger on. This is regarding the U.S. role for security in Israel and the state of Palestine. Question: how would you, as president, answer the complaint that the U.S. in its support of Israel is so pro-Israeli it can't be even-handed or an honest broker of matters and is anti-Muslim? It is. So let me be clear about that. Kucinich's answer: we need to reach out to Muslim nations and tell them America's taking a different direction. No more unilateralism, preemption, or first strike. Our policy will be strength through peace. As the one up here who not only voted against but voted 100% of the time against funding the war in Iraq. The war in Iraq was used to create a wedge between the United States and Islam. We need to protect and provide for the security of Israel and to make sure that the Palestinians can have a state. And it has to be done under the circumstances where the security of all parties and the civil rights and human rights of all parties are protected. Bro, that is about as of a presidential compromise you can have. Yeah, you do have a right to exist, Israel. You know, it is what it is. Because Israel was a place, but it was not what it is today. It was in Palestine. It wasn't engulfing Palestine. However, understanding how sometimes you just can't you can't reverse history, but sometimes you can rewrite it for the sake of peace. Kucinich is like, but first and foremost, we got to make sure that Palestine can be a state, a sovereign state. Sovereign statehood is so important. You get a military, you get your own currency if you choose to. You can, obviously make decisions for yourself. Israel wouldn't be able to go around willy-nilly just taking settlements. This is important, especially back at a time where it was much more unpopular to take this stance. There is no basis for an Iran military resolution. He goes on to say, we need to adamantly reject any kind of move toward war with Iran. There's no basis whatsoever. We have a number of enablers who happen to be Democrats who have said over the last year, with respect to Iran, all options are on the table. When you say all options are on the table, you are licensing Bush. I'm the only one up here on this stage who not only voted against the war in Iraq, but voted against funding the war. He voted against the war in Iraq, voted against funding the war, but also led the effort against Bush's drive towards war. And he talks about that in this interview or this event with Tulsi, how he was out in New York with millions of people, literally doing activism as a congressperson, leading the charge against the war in Iraq. Here's where it gets better, though. Impeach Bush for violating international law on preemption. The problem is these policies of preemption license a war. Preemption by virtue of international law is illegal. Bush has already violated international law. The war in Iraq is illegal. Even planning for the war against Iran is illegal. We are here in Philadelphia, the birthplace of democracy. I want to know when this Democratic Congress is going to stand up for the Constitution and hold the president accountable. With Article 2, Section 4, an impeachment act, our democracy is in peril. I know what some of you may be thinking. Okay, so what? What does that mean? Why should I care? Well, like I said in Tulsi's case, because endorsing Tulsi could hurt him. Clearly, he isn't doing it for popularity. He could just endorse Bernie, and Kucinich likes Bernie. He supports Medicare for all. He was one of the very, very first proponents of Medicare for all. Okay, he ran on it along with Mike Gravel in 2007. And guess what? They had two slightly different versions, and nobody tried to, castrate the other one. But now we have to ask the question, hold on, so why is he choosing Tulsi? Well, he's choosing Tulsi because of what he said. We need to deal with our foreign policy now. If you want any type of domestic policy seriously considered and then enacted, but most importantly, once again, the commander-in-chief has the most power when you are president. Instantaneous power. Instantaneous. Okay? Now, this says something. This meeting that she's having, she didn't only have it with her. It was hosted, at least initially, by Kim Iverson. And you got Dennis Kucinich there. You have another gentleman. I think there's two more gentlemen there, and I'm going to talk about them separately, so I don't want to spoil it. And you got Tulsi there, obviously. During a debate night where they were more upset that Congress, that like the senators up there, they were like, oh man, how could you not have asked us before you assassinated? We would have, you would have voted against it. You gave him the money to do it multiple times. It says something that Tulsi keeps Kucinich around her, and that this is the positive influence that he could have on her administration if he were to become a part of that administration in some capacity. We have history to show his anti-war stance. People say that Tulsi could be more anti-war in some instances. And I would say, of course, there's always ways to be more anti-war. Absolutely, 100% agree. Kucinich is one of those types of people who can help get her there. See, the thing about being the president isn't just about you being the president. But especially when you're like a Tulsi or a Bernie, there are going to be people in your ear trying to convince you to do the wrong thing as Trump. And then you might have to get a call from Tucker Carlson to stop you from launching an attack on Iran. Like, you don't want to have to rely on Tucker Carlson. Okay? You want to have great people around you. And this signals to me that Tulsi plans on keeping some great people around her. Now, when you're talking about loyalty, you know that Kucinich was the one who went with Tulsi to Syria. That's why it was so funny whenever they were like, oh my God, she just went by herself to go Kate. Like, no, Kucinich is anti-war. And to be honest with you, I can't confirm this yet. I haven't talked to her about it. I haven't asked the campaign about it. But I guarantee that going in there with the mindset that Kucinich puts you in is a lot different than going in there with the mindset that Tulsi once had. Going in there to figure out whose fault it is. Like, is it Assad's fault? Is it the military's fault? No, it was where did things go wrong and how the U.S. contribute, because that's almost 100% of the time what happened. And that's what she found. And that's why they were terrified. I can almost guarantee, too, that they were attacking Tulsi mostly because of her bringing Kucinich, because of his anti-war stances. And in presidential elections, like what we've seen, he had been known to call the establishment out, especially its most popular members. This is not small potatoes. You have someone, for people who say she's not really anti-war, she's not the peace candidate. She is the peace candidate. She is. And, you know, I've debated about this, and that's fine. People can disagree. But it's super weird how the most peaceful people continue to endorse Tulsi. The ones who have been on the ground, who have seen it, who know everybody else in this race, and still said, you know what? Man, Tulsi got it. She gets it now. You're ready. And we can't wait for anybody else. So she has another key endorsement too that we're going to discuss too. But for now, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream. Oh, no, this isn't live stream, is it? Because Pasa and Fiorella are live right now, and they didn't tell me. So y'all have to watch this pre-recorded. Thanks, Pasa and Fia. Y'all go thank them on Twitter. But still, I appreciate you watching. And always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Congratulations, Tulsi. That's a pretty significant endorsement. Can't wait to see more roll in. Peace.